Jack Eichel could be on the move. Well, he said in his season-ending availability, "I just want to get healthy and play next year, wherever that may be." And with that, the hockey world was on fuego yesterday, Randip. And now we are left wondering what would be the best landing spot for Jack Eichel.
Yeah, anytime there's a disconnect between the player and a team, whether it's injury related or just in terms of the future, that's when the ears perk up and say, all right, let's look at some of those trade destinations. And I got to say, if you're Kevin Adams, what do you do here? Because you've got a franchise player. When he's good, he's potentially a Hart Trophy candidate. We saw that last year, halfway through the year, when he was looking really, really good. So what is that value? The last thing you want is a replay of the Ryan O'Reilly situation. So what you need right now, and I'm going to basically break it down this way, Dan, is that you got to have a legit star coming back the other way. Maybe not to the Jack Eichel level, but you need something coming back that is a ready-made NHL or top six forward. You also need a prospect, and you need some futures. You need some picks coming back, and some high ones at that. So the price seems high, but that's essentially what I think the GM has to be looking for, because you cannot be fleeced yet again. And you're not giving up an average player here. You're giving up a player on his day that seems like a guy that could essentially, change a team. And he's that type of talent. So this is a tough situation for the Buffalo Sabres, but they might have some options.
Look, I know Dwayne in Buffalo and many other Buffalonians probably don't want to hear this, but they've got to go full in on the rebuild again. You've got to take whatever the best package is, and it's probably going to be ones that have a lot of futures, and you've got to get big-time prospects. Build around Rasmus Dahlin. Hopefully he starts to figure out his career himself. Dylan Cousins. But, what does Buffalo have that you're really building around if you trade Jack Eichel? You need to strip whatever is left down, which is not much, and just go all in on yet another rebuild, because they don't have much other choice. You can't really look at this and say, we're getting a top six forward back and this and that. You're still going to be bad. So what's the difference, if you're the Buffalo Sabres? Now, when we think about who the number one contender is, I think everybody knows. And this is a team that could probably provide all of those assets for the Buffalo Sabres, and it is the New York Rangers.
And this is a team that is on the cusp of wanting to do something big. Okay, James Dolan, clearly what happened in the last week tells you that. Right? He's a guy that has got a bit of an itchy trigger finger, and we saw that last week. He wants to win now, and what would be a better way than bringing in Jack Eichel? I don't really think there's any other option if you're trying to look at making that move. But what do you have to give up? The name that I would be, asking for, Mika Zibanejad, because all of a sudden you're in a position where you need that ready-made player. Zibanejad has to get paid in a year. The Rangers have to free up some cap space. It makes a lot of sense for both parties. But beyond that, they've got young stars. That prospect I was talking about, they've got some high-end players, whether that's a Kaapo Kakko, obviously Alexis Lafreniere, depending on how badly James Dolan wants this. And beyond that, you've got picks there as well, Dan. So the Rangers are, I think, in the driver's seat based on the fact that they've got the pieces. But the one thing we've seen from James Dolan in basketball is when he wants to go all in, when he wants a player, Andrea Bargnani, he will make it happen. And sometimes it's to the detriment of his team. But in this case, if you're making a move for Jack Eichel, I could see organizational pressure playing here as well.
Randy, this as an aside, are you still hurt about the Andrea Bargnani trade as a Knicks fan?
Yes. Very much so. Very much so. It hurts me to this day.
Well, that's kind of the thing. If the Rangers want to do this, if Dolan wants to do this, they have everything that they could. And for Buffalo, I think that would be great. I don't know if they get Lafreniere or Kakko, but you can get a Kravtsov. You can get some really nice pieces, plus some picks, and maybe even get Zibanejad as part of that deal too. I don't know if the Rangers want to do that, but he's, a year away from free agency. You got to be thinking 4D chess here, and maybe, okay, now we can flip Zibanejad and get more assets. That's how I would look at it if I'm Kevin Adams. But the other big team is the LA Kings. They've got the glitz, they've got the glamour, they're on the up and up now. They had a pretty good season by, rebuilding standards, kind of fought for the playoffs for a while. You were touting Drew Doughty for the Norris, and we see how that played out as the season wore on. But there's also, Alex Turcotte. I don't know if they want to give up Byfield necessarily. He might be an untouchable, but they've got a lot of assets. Rob Blake has done a fantastic job in building out assets. And Jack Eichel, in Hollywood. You know, LA wants their stars. Kopitar and Doughty are on their back nine, that's for sure. You get a new one and a guy that can potentially bring winning back to the Staples Center. I think that makes all the sense in the world.
From a player's perspective, it totally does, especially with the LA Kings, being in Buffalo for so many years, you're kind of off the radar, right? Going to LA, all of a sudden you're under the spotlight. And from a endorsement point of view, from another perspective, earning that non-hockey related revenue, absolutely, it's a big sell for the player. But the difference between a package here would be, with the Rangers package, you might be able to get something that's ready for your roster right now. You mentioned Zibanejad. There's maybe some other pieces that you could get off the New York Rangers roster that could fit with the Buffalo Sabres right now. They need some help in the short term as well. The LA Kings don't necessarily have that. You mentioned Turcotte. I think that would be the centerpiece of the deal. The rest of it would be a number of futures. You'd probably have more prospects, draft picks. But if you're talking about off that roster right now, I don't know if there's something that's that appealing to the Buffalo Sabres. But then again, it depends on what Kevin Adams wants to do. If he's saying, I need some players right now so we're competitive, then the Rangers deal makes sense. But the LA Kings, that's more of a futures deal. If you're saying, yeah, just give us the young talent, we're going to make sure that we build, 3 or 4 years down the road. The LA Kings have something to offer. And I got some other teams that I want to throw up there as well.
You got a dark horse for us? All right, let's hear it.
I think the team that everybody north of the border this offseason is going to be watching is the Calgary Flames. What do the Calgary Flames do? This is an organization that they've, been talking about something's gone wrong, right? And whether it's a Johnny Gaudreau, we know his name's been trade rumors.
I don't think they could put together a package, Randip. Like, you're going to have to get wild. You'd probably have to throw Matthew Tkachuk in there.
Well, that's where I was going with that. Johnny Gaudreau appeals to he's a winger. But beyond that, Matthew Tkachuk, and there's rumblings. If you listen to Calgary radio right now, fans are not happy with Matthew Tkachuk. And I don't understand it, honestly. But there's actually, folks that are saying maybe you put him in that deal to get Jack Eichel, because that center position is a little light right now. Can't believe it, but Matthew Tkachuk's name has been thrown out there, at least in Calgary, which I find baffling, but it feels like Calgary's ready to do something big this offseason. And how big of a step back was this for Matthew Tkachuk? Are you willing to even consider him in a deal right now? $7 million coming off the books, but you would potentially get a franchise center in Jack Eichel. That one intrigues me, I'm not going to lie.
Something in the water in Edmonton. Maybe it's now something in the water in Calgary. I know people are going to want us to mention Vancouver as the two Vancouver guys here. It's not happening. So there's too much cap issues. They don't have the package that they could probably put out. And yeah, your priority is keeping Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes happy right now in Vancouver. Now, I think as a dark horse, maybe I'm getting a little bit wild with this one, Randy, but the Washington Capitals.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Like, hear me out. They've got Evgeny Kuznetsov, who there's some not so happy people with Evgeny Kuznetsov after everything that's happened this year. So there's a big time player that you can give to Buffalo, and then you try to work out a package around that. Now, Kuznetsov is a couple of years older than Eichel. So there's that part of the issue. Do the Capitals have a lot of the future assets? I don't know, but that's a team. I think if they're looking to extend their window, they have to re-up Alex Ovechkin in the offseason as well. But they're trying to keep that window open as long as possible and really making a play for Jack Eichel. That could be something that they do to do it.
Okay, that's a bit of a hot take from you. I can see it in theory.
Wouldn't be the first time.
It wouldn't be. But in practice, Kuznetsov, outside of the year that they won the Stanley Cup, where his regular season 80-plus points, unbelievable playoffs. I thought he should have won the Conn Smythe that year. That's how good he was.
Yeah.
Outside of that,
it's still funny to me. Like, Ovechkin was never losing that Conn Smythe. Stop
it. But if you look at what he did that year, 32 points, only Nikita Kucherov and Evgeny Malkin in recent history have had more. That's how good Kuznetsov was. That's how
Who said Russians are bad in the playoffs, eh?
It's not a thing. But my point here is that Kuznetsov, at this point in his career, is he that huge of a player that you'd want on your roster? Is he that central of a piece? And I would argue not. For that, the off the ice stuff that you've had to deal with in the last little bit if you're the Capitals, the amount of money that he makes. If I'm Kevin Adams, I'm saying I'm looking elsewhere. I'm looking at Zibanejad. I'm looking at other deals. And you mentioned futures. Other than Connor McMichael, what else is Washington offering? So in theory, it makes sense because, yeah, that'd be an exciting landing spot for Jack Eichel, but I don't see that package appealing to the Buffalo Sabres. I got another Canadian team that I want to bring up, the Montreal Canadiens. The Montreal Canadiens are a very intriguing option because they got a lot of money falling off their roster after this season. They got Nick Suzuki, they got Cole Caulfield, they got a bunch of draft picks. If you're looking for a futures pack, but also at the same time, a first-line center, and Nick Suzuki, who's developing his game and in a couple of years can be a central part of your team, I look at that Montreal package as a more realistic one than the Washington one. The Washington one to me is a pipe dream. It's great if you're Washington, but there's no way Buffalo says we're taking that. Montreal, however, all of a sudden, this is a team that's already pushing their chips into the middle of the table. If you're willing to move off some of those younger players, that's an option.
I don't know if they'd be able to do it. Salary cap. Yeah, there's
a lot of
gonna
UFAs this summer, though.
There's going to have to be some moves there. They could use that top line center, though. What do you think? Who or where is the best landing spot for Jack Eichel? Let us know in the comments. Always subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.